It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. Okay, first thing, Feedback Friday. The laptop I ordered arrived. That was a rigmarole. So thank you to those who have already helped chip in via coffee. We're at 58% of goal, which is awesome. It's actually more like 70% of the original goal because people chipped in via PayPal and stuff like that. So I am greatly appreciative of this. So any extra help I can get, I'll leave it up for like a week or something like that. I didn't know what to expect from this. So I'm very, very grateful for this. I'm also very grateful about the people who engaged thoughtfully and stayed on bloody topic this week. The gaming video on Tuesday went better than they normally do. I think it might be because at this point in time, YouTube viewership tends to be low, I guess, because back to school and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't care if some people shit up the comments. If there is a critical mass of people engaging, and there was on this one. So thank you for that. And that's going to lead into the discussion. I mean, the men liking stuff, the men liking stuff series, I didn't know how it was going to go. In terms of the quality of content, it has exceeded expectations. I'm super glad that people liked A Dead Guy. Please check out his channel. That was cool. It's nice for me to be able to showcase other creators that I really like and promote. That made me happy. I'm always a little worried that people are going to be shitty to people who are other YouTubers, so that was cool. But yeah, there's been talk about doing one on Spider-Man now, so I don't know. I'll see. I'm going to give it a bit because they are a bit to organize for me, but they are always so wholesome when they're done. So yes, yay. Let's help support this channel. Link it in the feedback. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Okay. If you heard me kind of laughing there, I was thinking about some of the comments about med liking stuff regarding Brian Michael Bendis. We won't go there. We're keeping it wholesome, but that was some funny exchanges on the Discord. It is coming up on invites for the month via Patreon and Coffee. So if you would like server access, if you would like to join our Discord, that is one way. Like, do a coffee donation or become a Patreon, and you will get, like, I send out things. I'll do it Monday, maybe. It's usually tomorrow. It's the 5th of every month that I do it, give or take. So if you would like to join, now's a good. Wait, today is the 5th. Oh, it's been that kind of week. Okay, you know what I mean. I will give it a bit. I will do it Monday. Give people time to watch a video. There we go. So, okay. So, on Wellness Wednesday, people did provide feedback. Thank you for that on dating stuff. Some people said, yes, I'm interested. Other people pivoted, which I always listen to these comments because they engage and offer like an option C about making friends. And I'm going to mull that one over because valid points were raised. Won't belabor that, but thank you, commenter. That was sort of a disagreement, but they offered something which moved the conversation forward. So, Death Stranding likes. And speaking of Death Stranding, that is what sort of made me go, whoa, wait, like, no. Why are people saying AAA games don't innovate? And of course, there was some bile in the comments, but like I said, enough people meaningfully engaged with it that there was enough like things to respond to. And one of the things I found very interesting is that no one could actually find something about Baldur's Gate 3 that was truly innovative. One person said that they brought back a type of gameplay that AAA had abandoned. And okay, but that's not innovation. That's sticking with, that's retro, right? And that only matters if we consider Larian a AAA dev, because otherwise there's nothing special about an indie company. Owlcat does it and Beamdog does it. And yes, they do like the purely isometric. Baldur's Gate 3 played a lot like Divinity Original Sin 2 to me. And that's part of the reason that it took me 3 tries to get into it. Somebody mentioned the early access model, and that was something I actually didn't like about it, because I think if you have a budget that big, if you're doing a fully voiced game, then the early access, I was annoyed, because I actually liked Shadowheart better in early access. And when they're going, well, the fans said that is a AAA move. That is, well, the data says. That is not innovative. That is not experimental. That is crowdsourced content. That is a big reason. Like, they were using early access as playtesting. And that's a AAA move. Oh, like, just make it populist. Just make it what people like. It doesn't matter if it makes no freaking sense. Shadowheart just ended up seeming kind of bipolar and snotty, and the whole thing about her being a lot of the lore, the way Larian interpreted lore in Baldur's Gate 3, I did not like, and I almost felt like if I knew less about the Forgotten Realms and the past games, I would like it better. But because I am sort of a Forgotten Realms nerd, I bounced off of it. And that doesn't mean it wasn't a good game. Saying it wasn't innovative is not saying it's not good. It's just, it proves the point that something can be very enjoyable. Something can feel like we haven't seen it in a while. It can be a fresh perspective and be experimental, but innovative has a meaning. And when we combine this with, like, I don't find Elden Ring a terribly innovative game either. It was just it was a lot of asset reuse from Bloodborne, going back to more of like a Dark Souls 2 with refinements, but the jank was still there, and then it was George R. R. Martin. But Elden Ring played very much like one of the better From Software games. It was sort of just an evolution of the formula, but I can't think of anything terribly innovative about how that game played. You know, it's just like, what's new? Unlike, like, there are certain games I can absolutely tell you where the innovations are in it. I mean, I keep going back to Death Stranding 2. AAA game. People say, no, it's not. Kojima Productions classifies itself as a AAA game, and it gets direct support from Sony. It's a AAA game. And that game, you know, that's the thing where, okay, it brought Porter games to North America. That's innovation sort of by the skin of its teeth. It's not bringing Porter games back to North America. It's porting it over. Pardon the pun. But the asymmetrical social mechanics in that game are innovative. And innovation has to be something that moves things forward, not goes back, like Baldur's Gate 3 did, to those sort of squad-based isometric games. I mean, I even think at first I'm like, I want to give the multiplayer an innovation nod with Baldur's Gate 3, but it's really not, because it's just MMO mechanics with pre-rolled characters. And I keep trying to make that one fit and can't quite do it, because then, I mean, those social mechanics in Death Stranding 2, they are innovative. They have moved things forward. And it was risky as fuck. And they even managed to refine the formula from Death Stranding 1 to make it kind of bigger, more intense, even more emotional. In Death Stranding 2, Kojima does not sit on his laurels. And that's an innovative AAA game. And even if we don't say, oh, well, it's the Sony angle, the sheer budget on it, that's a AAA game. It is. It just is. It just is. You don't have to like an innovation. You don't have to be personally invested in an innovation to say it is innovative. I mean, if you look at, and this was in the comments, people were crapping on sports games for not innovating. And that's when I just go, that is letting emotion override facts. As much as everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but people in my orbit don't like sports gamers. But I covered sports games when I was at E3 for like freaking a decade. And why? Because I was the only one who'd do it a lot of the time. Some of it was out of interest because I wanted to be informed. And sports games and racing games, they innovate. Sports games were on the bleeding edge of likeness capture. So making that professional athlete look recognizable in the game. And that technology filtered down into other games. A lot of physics engines were refined in sports games, car games, and shooters. Weather mechanics, major innovations through games like Forza. And I know this because I sat in the behind closed doors where they presented the feature and talked about, I mean, I remember being in the behind closed doors for what became Stray Dogs. And I remember seeing very cinematic in-engine open world moments and going, that's not supposed to be possible. Every other open world dev I've talked to said you can't do that because it's, it's forcing things in a way. And so I asked, how did that work? And they had to keep things a log, and it's kind of, I guess they weren't ready for the question. And so they played the behind closed doors, and one of the devs came and crouched down next to me and said, when this is over, ask that question again. So I did, and I got a really good answer because they talked about how there were certain sliders in the game that they sort of turned up and down for specific moments. Such a simple solution. But oh my God, it was neat. And of course, the next two questions were, can you romance people in the game? Is there swimming in the game? And is there swimming in the game became a punchline with people who were there with me for that. Every so often they just went, is there swimming in the game? To kind of joke about where I was at as a games reporter and where other people were at. And this is the problem, that a lot of people who have very, very strong opinions about games don't know shit. And I actually bothered to learn a thing or two about how these things are made and what it takes. And edginess is not innovation. Experimentation is not innovation. It can be. It can be. But it is not always. There's a lot of indie games like Undertale that are experimental, but no single element of that game was innovative. It was a retro pixel art. they did a novel approach to a pacifist mode, but AAA games are doing pacifist runs. I mean, the first time I encountered a pacifist run, and that is not saying it's the first time, it's just the first one I encountered, was non-lethal attacks in Splinter Cell. So, and Dishonored had it as well, both AAA games. And I'm not saying those are the absolute first. I'm just saying that, look, the reason AAA is so data-driven is because developing these new technologies are expensive. So they have to sell. They have to have a certain expectation of sales to get the funding to build these things and spend the money trying to figure out how to make hair look better, how to make weather work better, lighting. Oh my God, game lighting was my obsession for a while because we saw it change. Because the minute we went to 3D, dynamic lighting became a real challenge because it was a resource hoarder. So it went from lighting that lagged a game, because you could have these cool like spotlights and street lights that were just, they could turn on and off. But then games like, was it Mirror's Edge? I think actually baked the light into the environments because the game wouldn't run smoothly. And that was a very fast-paced game. And so light baking became a thing for a while. But then when things like, I mean, they were refining it before ray tracing, but things like ray tracing came along and all of a sudden they could do all these things they couldn't do before. And yeah, that was a technology developed by, third-party companies that games used. But this is all innovation. Going from Pong to we can recognize Norman Reedus and Deborah Wilson in a game on site. That happened through innovation. That couldn't have happened without AAA and these games that all of us, like nerds, find kind of boring. But one of the things to me about being kind of an enthusiast, being a gamer, and I just saw a thing that apparently 2/3 of women gamers are embarrassed. They feel guilt about their hobby. And I'm like, that actually makes me nauseous, because am I embarrassed by some of the behavior in this space? Absolutely. Am I embarrassed? Do I feel guilt about my appreciation for some of this stuff? No, this is some of the greatest populist art to be produced in the new millennium. I will stand this shit. I will stand up for it. But part of being an enthusiast is giving credit where credit's due and not being such a fucking snob about things. And I've had a lot of accidental conversations this week with indie devs who say they cannot stand going to indie dev events anymore because they are so fucking pretentious. And I do think that because indie is so Wild West, we do have to check that, because that's always that and abusive staff are the two big things. And that's why, I think everybody got behind companies like Sandfall Interactive, because not only did they make a really interesting product with their AAA experience, because part of what made that so great was that sort of Western gaming polish, that sort of AAA polish in a Persona style gameplay with a Belle Epoque coat of paint. But Sandfall knocked down the idea that it was a game only made by 30 people. That, we call that indie. Somebody mentioned, a few people mentioned AA games. And of course, one guy said, "You dishonestly ignore AA games. You are dishonest." And like, no, you don't get to do that, because if we can't define AAA, how the fuck? If we can't even separate indie and AAA neatly, How do we separate double A from triple A? Double A is something that a lot of us have been starting to kind of call this thing that doesn't fit anywhere. I did not bring it up because it was not relevant to what I was talking about. There is nothing bloody dishonest about that. I stuck with Larian because they called themselves indie. I don't have to give them, oh no, you're really double A, because I don't believe they actually are double A. I believe they're a triple A company. Something like Claire Obscure, Expedition 33, that I would say my definition of double A would be that people with AAA experience going off and forming their own companies to do their passion projects. So stuff like The Long Dark, stuff like Claire Obscure Expedition 33. They don't have the budgets to do a full AAA experience, but they are not truly indie. That's what I would call double A, but that has no place in a discussion of pre-established terms and why they don't. I can't make up my own definition in a discussion about how the existing definitions don't work. That would be disingenuous, right? That would just be intellectually dishonest. But I love how when someone can't actually argue your reasoning, they attack your motivations. And that is something that has to stop, because not only does it poison the dialogue, which can be very interesting. And I mean, that guy was the minority opinion, because a lot of other people said, yeah, I honestly don't know what these terms mean anymore. And I think a lot of people don't, right? But that has to stop, because it stops dialogue, which in itself kills innovation. I'm tired of the fucking snobbery. I'm tired of the trying to sound like an elite snob 1 minute and then having a complete meltdown and taking on the emotional equivalence of like an 8-year-old the next. You don't get to have it both ways. And this accusing people of ill intent just because you don't agree with them with absolutely zero evidence. It's a race to the bottom. It is something, I can't stop it in the greater industry. I even see people who like get, you know, full-time employment as games journalists pulling that crap. And it's like, no, we have to have not only some ethical standards, but standards for critical thinking as well. And I'm weird in this space because I've worked in other types of reporting. I work in other types of news. And one of the things that when you have to do actual reporting, which means facts-based, everybody knows about this for the Superman movie now. And it was so funny because that whole, well, come on, between Clark and Lois in that one scene, I've had that fight with my husband, and I said the exact same thing Lois did. Do I think so? Probably, but I can't prove it. And that is the fundamental thing of being a good reporter. You sometimes have to push on tough questions to give your subject an opportunity to either clear the air, refute malicious rumors about them, get on the record saying, no, that's not true. This is true. And your job in that moment is to just get them unequivocally on the record. There's no denying they said it. So that if they then go and change their minds on something, then it's there. Right? It's in black and white. And I'm seeing a lot of revisionist history going on in the gaming space right now. Notably, like I said in previous videos, by former BioWare devs. I just know that this idea that there was no plan for a sequel, there may have been no direct sequel plan, but there was world building. There was a lot more content than what was in that first game. How do I know that? Well, because I was at a convention where they donated some art auction pieces that had concept art that involved Flemeth being possessed. And that didn't come out until the end of Inquisition. It took a while. That was not known in that first game. Flemeth was just the Baba Yaga in that first game. But there was clearly much more. All the elven lore. I mean, it was woven into the first game to the point that they got stuck on keeping Solus bald because that's how they modeled him. But this idea that there was just no plan for future games, that's just chalk is not cheese. And up is not down. And there's documented stuff that refutes this assertion. And this matters because I'm very careful because I have a bias against BioWare developers talking because of my behind closed doors for Dragon Age Inquisition. Because I specifically asked, blanking on his name now, it was not Mark Dara. God, it was there and now it's gone. But I remember seeing they were showing the playable Kunari mage. And the lips weren't sewn shut. And I said, that's Kunari. Yes. Not Talvashoth. No. Well, that's a real change. The lips aren't shown shut. You are saying that is a Kunari Cerebos. Yes. It was not true. This matters. This matters. These guys are not reliable sources. And when it comes to our understanding of this stuff, when it comes to understanding not only what someone's doing, but why it works. I do think that part of the reason that BioWare has been circling the bowl is because there's obviously been a resentment building up. The EA acquisition went as badly as everybody said it was going to be, and I held out hope that it was going to be better, but no, it was everything everybody said about the evil empire of Electronic Arts swallowing, smaller game dev studios like Galactus Eats Planets. And these guys are bitter. But don't take every word they say on a podcast as gospel. A lot of it is opinion stated as fact. And Mike Laidlaw, I think that was the guy's name. But yeah, it just was flat out not true. And that's why you ask the question. Because you can see which people... I never had that happen with God of War. And what's great is when you make news because you go in and show much appreciation. Like apparently I was one of the first reporters to break that there was going to be a dog companion in Fallout New Vegas because I just flat out asked, is dog meat in the game? That was apparently newsmaking. But when you go in there and show appreciation, you actually know what you're talking about. You can show knowledge of subject and seem like, oh, wow, that's really cool. How did you do that? You show skill. You get more out of devs. And the problem is that there's no reward for merit in games journalism right now. There are rewards for misery. If you report rumors and spread a bunch of hot takes, yeah, you get a bunch of clicks, and that's the only thing that matters, because I really believe we need an inside the actor's studio type thing for gaming where people can come in and AAA devs can talk not about anything covered by NDA, just about making games. Because one of the most fundamental, not true things that keeps spreading in the gaming community right now is the idea that AAA devs do not care about gamers. I know AAA devs. I have friends who are AAA devs. and they talk to me a lot more now that I'm not a journalist for obvious reasons. Well, I'm still a journalist, but I'm in mental health journalism. But these folks, not only do they care about gamers, they are gamers themselves. Like, I am talking hardcore gamers. I find out things about games through them. I'm like, okay, this is amazing. But they care. They care very deeply. And they are people. And even the executives, like, all the executives aren't created equal. And I find it very interesting that people just make shit up about these people without knowing anything about them. And I'm fortunate to have at least had, an opportunity to have conversations with guys like Yves Guillemot and Shu from PlayStation. And, well, it wasn't much of a conversation with Shu. I was like, oh my God, Shu. But Cliff Blazinski, I'm not supposed to call him Cliffy B anymore. These guys care. They care. The Assassin's Creed devs care really deeply. The Far Cry devs care really deeply. Nobody makes a game in adapted Proto-Indo-European language if you don't care about making interesting experiences. Thank you, Far Cry Primal. The company that brought you things like Blood Dragon and Primal, you're actually telling me they don't care? That those were just cash grabs? It doesn't even make any sense. Is it hard? Yes. Is it too hard to get things through the AAA gauntlet because of the sales expectations? Like, it used to be 3 to 5 million copies. Then it became 5 to 7 million copies. And now it's like, oh, sell 15. Then we'll be happy. That's a huge lift. And is it true that it's hard to get things through that process? Absolutely, because there's so much money on the line. But that's true of film. That's true of TV. Right? Like, nobody can just walk in off the street and say, I want to direct a Marvel movie. Right? So, because if that were true, I would be directing the dupe film. Who's dupe? Exactly. Eileen will tell you someday. But that's the thing. They don't care. That is an emotional response. And I'm sorry for the mockery. That was me having an emotional moment. Because that is just... It is an emotional reaction, not a logical one. And then people get the bit in their teeth and they will not acknowledge that's just the way it feels. I have no way to prove it. There's probably a lot of evidence to the contrary. Don't tell me the Remedy guys don't care. For fuck's sake, they did a dance. Sam Lake was up there dancing. How do you say that guy doesn't care? Oh, not him. Well, if you exclude every bit of evidence that refutes your premise, at some point you're being intellectually dishonest because you had a feel. And the feeling's okay. But how about reframing it to, I don't feel like my voice matters. I don't feel that what I like matters. I'm tired of being demonized for a cheap soundbite. Fair. That's totally fair. We can see evidence of that. That's not saying no one cares. That's saying too many people who are talking to the press representing AAA studios are throwing gamers under the bus for a cheap, we're the modern gaming man soundbite, which is why it made me drop Mortal Kombat 11. If you're telling me, NetherRealm, that you were knowingly being disrespectful to women in your past costumes designs, well, I like those, but fuck you. I don't give my money to people who were knowingly disrespectful. Now, I don't believe that's true, but they said it. And that matters. And similarly, I don't believe that no one at BioWare cares about making good games. I know there are people. And so just because like a few of their top people have gotten bitter and are shady with the truth doesn't mean no one cares. And this matters because if you want to be listened to, and I say this as somebody who got shit pounded for finding the cross in the synagogue in The Last of Us 2, because that was the game you were not allowed to criticize. Oh, it was so brilliant and feminist. Bullshit. But they patched it out very quietly, but they patched it out months later, but they did. First time I ever got dogpiled really badly as a reporter. Well, no, the first time was Halo 3 because I only gave it an 8 out of 10. But I remember the really nasty when I said that World of Warcraft could stand improvements. Their lack of a noob zone is inexcusable based on the competition from Age of Conan, and then the Warhammer MMO, which I absolutely loved, and it didn't get a chance. Savage. Sure enough, what does WoW have now? Noob zones, starter zones. And apparently they're expanding on them. Somebody told me. I don't know. That I have not confirmed that. But, you know, if you want to eventually be listened to, you have to find your hinge. You have to seem, one, that you can be satisfied. And someone's going, you don't care about me, you don't care. I'm sorry, you sound like every game dev's psychotic ex-girlfriend that he dated because she was the first woman to look at him, but was probably like seriously unhinged. They don't know you personally. The idea, we care about the fans, that is a huge crock of shit. And I'm sorry if you fell for it, but that's a crock of shit. What they care is the fans' money. What they care is the cheering. It's feeding their ego. You can't care about somebody you don't know. You can't care about a crowd. What you can do is empathize. It's like, look, there are people like me out there. I was once a fan. I now work in the industry, but I am going to keep my humanity and actually make products for people like me. But that's a self-validation strategy. That's not actually caring about somebody you don't even know. And if you're looking for games to care about you, and I say this as somebody that I play a Death Stranding game and go, my God, I feel so understood. But I'm not understood. I am understanding what Kojima's doing. I'm projecting. And I know that. And that's why, I mean, I can never be in the same space as that man. I would fangirl so hard. Oh my God, he's just so, I'm in awe of what he manages to get through. And the risks he takes and the statements he makes. And I would rather focus on stuff like that and stuff like the God of War franchise that has innovated its... And do you remember the pushback when they switched from Greece to Norse myth? Whew, people wanted them to fail. And they didn't forsake Kratos younger. They managed to move the series forward and mature him and innovate the format without doing what Mortal Kombat did and said, we're being respectful now. So I'm going to stand God of War and I'm going to stand Death Stranding and I'm going to play Silksong. I'm going to say these things are good. Not just because I like them, but because if you're not someone who can focus on what you love. Alan Wake. I waited 13 years for Alan Wake 2. I was such an Alan Wake stan. I must have played through that first game 8 times. And I had high expectations and they really met them. It was very, very well done. But if you can't focus on what you love, and there is so much to love in gaming. And that doesn't mean I can't go off and play the pretentious indie games, and still like them, like The Vanishing of Ethan Carter and things like that. I mean, I can do those. I played Stray. I like Stray. I even like Gone Home. I said it, right? Like, fine. I can do pretentious. But you can't get so hung up on the stuff you don't like or the stuff that makes you feel disappointed that you lose your perspective on how much good is out there. Because if you want innovation, whatever you mean by that, experimentation, stuff that doesn't just follow that very tried and true AAA formula, you gotta reward the games that do that. Like Alan Wake 2, like Death Stranding 2. You gotta reward those. Because if you don't, they don't make money, and AAA is all about making money. Furthermore, I do think we need to advocate for a clearly defined AA space and not let certain companies that are AAA in every way but name confuse us with emotional rhetoric into not seeing what's right in front of its face, which is Baldur's Gate 3 was interesting and it was big, but it was yet another flawed attempt to put the tabletop gaming experience on a computer game. And I just don't think you can do it. I mean, it was the first one that was really playable on console, but not even. There were others that came first. It's usually the second or third game that tries it that really hits because, Fable and whatnot, The Witcher's RPG mechanics really paved the way. I would say that The Witcher did more to bring RPG to console. They were action RPGs, yes, and they weren't squad-based, but all you're doing in Baldur's Gate is tabbing between characters. And that's not to say it's easy, right? It's just stop crapping on other people who work just as hard, just in a different way. I'm not going to reward that. I'm going to reward the people like, Sucker Punch and like Remedy and like Insomniac and, these companies that praise other people, that want to see everybody do well, who are good team players, who are embodying that spirit of gaming, which is create, play, share. Right? Now that that's been corporatized, that sounded really cheesy, but that really is it. There's a cool spirit in games, which you like this, I like this too. Let me show you stuff. Come in. Let me help you. Let me make this more accessible to you. Let me help you get in the door, introduce you to some people. That is the core of gaming, the gaming community, and the gamer identity. And that's been so shouted over by these haters that think they have the right to gatekeep this hobby. And they don't. And I'm saying this as someone who started playing in 1981 on Pac-Man. Was it that? Yeah, I guess it was. I was 3. I have been here the entire fucking time. My first console was an Atari. The first PC I ever played a game on was a Tandy 1000 with a green screen. And I played King's Quest on that. And no one is going to get to tell me that I am not representative. No one is going to get to tell me that I am dishonest about what I believe with this stuff. Not only does it make no sense, it's just a cheap argument that deserves to be disregarded. Oh, did I hurt your feelings with that? Sit, listen, and learn from it. I'm not saying this to hate you. I'm just saying this because if you love this hobby as much as I do, you'll stop making it look terrible. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone you can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Remember that, Discord invites go out this week if you want to become a patron or a coffee supporter. Laptop Fund is still open. Like and subscribe if you want to support me with spending no money. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.